Steve Rice? Steve, are we all set? He's a member of the budget committee.
Oh.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
All right. So I'd like to call to order the March 24th meeting of the Tiverton Budget Committee. Okay, the flag. Everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
United States of
America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Dan, if you were recording, that was 7:01.
7:01.
Either way. Okay. All right. So quick roll call. John Edwards is here. Dave Perry. Dave Perry.
Here.
Dan Derren. I am here. Darren's here. Tom Haley.
Here.
Arruda.
Present.
Todd Cherry.
Present.
Cynthia Isherwood. Mike Janick.
Here.
And Judy Jones and Joe Souza are not here. So the first meeting or first item on our agenda this evening is a budget presentation from the town on the municipal side. Hopefully everybody has their packets in front of them. We just now electronic copies as well. So Mr. Cotta, if you would please give us an overview on the municipal budget that the town council has already approved. Is what is being put in front of us here today. And just so everybody's aware, once we go through this overview, we have the option of asking some questions, diving deeper in specific sections. But I do have it where section 5, if we want to go right to the approve what is in front of us, we can do that right to section 5, not have to go line by line, section by section. Madam President.
John, I just want to let the budget committee know that we had 4 consecutive budget committee workshops. We met with every single department head. This is a very well vetted budget. We did, unfortunately, said no to a couple of items, but I want you to be assured that we did spend multiple hours on this, and we feel that this is the best budget that we can present right now.
Thank you. Mr. Cotta, please take it away.
Okay, so on the municipal side of the budget, including, and I know you will talk to the town clerk and the town treasurer at the appropriate times.
Oh, no, this is including all of it.
I know, that's what I'm getting at. The overall number that was ultimately approved to move to the budget committee for review is $22,094,979,000. That's a $703,883 increase, or a 3.29% increase. And on the capital side, and that was in the current year's budget is $21,391,496. On the capital side, it's $209,486 versus the current year, which is $221,040. There's a negative difference of $10,654, or negative 4.84%. So the key highlights here is, as it relates to debt service, you can see there's a $706,000 decrease. The debt service went down from 4.7 million to 4 million. There's almost a 15% decrease in that, and that's because the TIF bond has come to an expiration. Within that, the municipal capital, which is our debt service payments for our line items like the snow trucks or the pumpers or the rescues. Overall, that number went from 170,140 to 112,486. So there was a slight decrease there, but we did add the first full year of the ladder truck payment of 97,000. So it went from really 220,140 to 209,486. Again, there's a small minor decrease there. On the town government side, the town clerk's office had a very nominal increase of $88. The town council has 460,157, and that is predominantly based on some adjustments that were made. We made a significant increase in this because there are 3 union contracts that are up for being negotiated. We don't anticipate that they'll be fully completed until next year, and it is basically for the FY23 period moving forward. The IAFF firefighters is the largest share of that. All of our ASME employees and our Teamsters employees. This would represent a nominal increase in those, and you won't see some of those increases in those accounts. While there will be some increases in those accounts, I'll explain to you what they are when we get there. Board of Canvassers has a nominal increase for an election matter that's coming up this year. Town Hall operating is pretty much level except for $500. Legal service has an increase in it this year because our solicitor has not been seen an increase since he's started working for the town. And he actually does far more work for and far more hours than what we're actually paying him for. So it was somewhat of an adjustment to account for some of the litigation matters that we've been dealing with. And some of the matters he's been handling on behalf of the town council. Planning board stays level, zoning board stays level, town sergeant stays level, town referendum stay level, town administrators accounts are reflective of contractual matters for both myself and the assistant that I have. We did have to get a new copy this year. Our copy was 9 years old and had been off lease for 4 years and it just fried. It does get a lot of business. And we do have some townwide internet services that we had to increase to get off the real basic service. Land use, $900 increase in that budget, very nominal increase based on what they do. Probate has a very nominal increase of $300. Tax assessor, a $1,268 $100. Again, a very nominal, and we did decrease the reval account by 5,000. It is still putting significant money to move forward, and it's we bank that money until the next full reval, and then we'll have the money set up every year.
That's a restricted account also.
It is. On the treasurer's accounts, the largest share of the increase in that, it's $2,147, but 2,000 of it is related to our computerized payroll. What we had was a totally antiquated system. They've upgraded to a better version. They're still working through some of the nuances to it, but it was a desperately needed increase based on some of the reporting mechanisms that we were falling deficient on that we had to do by hand. Tax collector, again, there's a $334 decrease in that account. Tax sale was level. Insurance accounts are one of our bigger accounts that we've had some, it's still of a $3.1 million to $3.2 million budget. The increase we're projecting is $63,000. Our audits are projected, actually, this is one adjustment I meant to put on the last council meeting and I forgot all about. That number can be adjusted by $1,000 to be level at 25. So there is a small adjustment there. We checked on the actual contract that we had. On pension plans, we dropped the amounts from 1.4 million to 1,326,000. It winds up being a net decrease of $82,000. But the lion's share of it is the police pension has had a remarkable recovery over. John, you would well know that we've been putting some excessive payments in there to do a catch up because it's sat in a simple interest-bearing account for so long. So that is now at a recovered state, and we are trying to get back to just the ARC payments, maybe just a little bit over to make sure that that we're on track with that. But it's we did take a swipe at reducing that sum. Based on some of the salary increases that we'll have in the unionized contracts, we projected a $40,000 increase in Social Security, unemployment, unfunded liability, those things stay the same. Onto the fire department. Again, this contract is up for renegotiation at this point, but you'll see a $416,000 increase in that. The lion's share of that is we're adding, based on the state law change from 3 years ago, that our staff work 48 hours at straight time, and the state law changed it, so they have to pay overtime for everything over 42 hours. So based on the platoon schedules that we have, the debit day that we have, everybody works a debit day every 28 days. It's a cycle, but it's every day all through the year, adds a person to the staff of each platoon, 4 platoons. We're adding 4 staff to that. You'll see at the very end of the budget, there's a decrease of $317,000. We're anticipating receiving a SAFER grant. We applied for it. We think we have every justification to do it. That $317 will pay for each year for the next 3 years. So it's really a $900,000 grant. what I would ask though is when you get to looking at the general fund reserves, in anticipation of, I can't guarantee for sure we'll get this grant. If for some reason it fails, that we reserve the same amount from the general fund reserve to make these payments. Do that, or we have to pay everybody else. So it's a necessary evil to
Yeah.
comply with the law, and I think it's appropriate at this time to
Get
do
over
that.
here.
There are some minor issues as it relates to overtime and some other contractual EMS incentive issues that we would be dealing with as well. And that's why there's a $416,000 versus 317. On his budget, he's got some additional increases as it relates to his operational cost. Up 60,000 out of a $400,000, and it's the lion's share of them are really protective gear. And adding new bodies to this it's a significant amount of money that we're gonna have to outfit these guys with. So I don't think that they're uncalled for. On the police department, again, this contract reflects a number of different things. We negotiated this contract in the past cycle. It reflects a 2.75% increase for each of the next 3 years. There's also an approved COPS grant that was awarded for 2 additional staff. It does reflect the full amount of those staff, and there's an adjustment for each of the next 3 years. We'll see in the budget, very similar to the COPS, to the SRO, that we make an adjustment for that because we do have an award for that. So that's already been awarded. So that the overall increase is $320,000 in that account. And there are some very minor amounts into the general contractual mandated services. He went up by 8,000, and the lion's share of that was again for clothing allowances. His operations, obviously a lot of things have gone up, including tires, fuel, oil, those kind of things. He went from 245,000 to 282, a $36,000 increase. And they were pretty much fairly well justified throughout the deliberations of the town council. Municipal court stays level, harbor commission stays level, harbor master has a very minor amount. He actually does a contractual service for the no-wake zone buoys. It doesn't put as much of a beating on the boat. It's a professional service, comes out, takes care of him. They maintain the entire buoy system for him. We think it's an appropriate expense it was beating up the side of the boats as he was trying to do it. So, and he does have a decrease he tried to make a $1,500 decrease in his account to help offset that. Public Works, again, they're up for contract, so their salary accounts are fairly stable there, except for the superintendent. We did adjust his salary in the past year. His operating expenses have gone up by about 11%, from 405,000 to 451, and you can see there's a long list of what some of those increases are. But the predominant ones are going to be sand, salt, gravel. Sand went up 33%. It's a nightmare trying to deal with it. And obviously there's some other equipment things that we've been kicking the can down the road. So adding $10,000 to his equipment account was pretty much a necessity based on some of the needs that they have over there. Most of the others are just nominal account increases. The lion's share of the increase really in public works is going to fall under landfill. While the street lighting stayed the same and the hydrant services stayed the same, the fact that this landfill is closing in November, from December through June, not only will we be hauling the trash to Johnston, we also have to pay tipping fees of $65 a ton. And that's going to go up. Next year, it's going to be $85 a ton. It's going to be expensive to run this landfill stuff. And the landfill is definitely closing after November. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We've already put that out to bid. The contractor will start working on it very soon. Landfill operations is actually the staff, and most of those ultimately next year when the landfill does close, recycling issues are going to be part of what their duties will be. And we still have requirements of maintaining all the like the well reviews, all the sampling that they do, all those things. Actually, we're going to be adding wells, so that's why that number went up by $15,000.
Just want to interrupt here because we are having a discussion right now about the pay as you throw program.
Yep.
And whether or not we want to continue it, whether it's the cheap bags we're dealing with right now or stickers on the bags. We're hoping that maybe we can do a program where the pay-as-you-throw will help with the hauling to Johnson program. So
Right.
we are working on that right now.
So we actually have reinstituted the recycling committee to also take a look at how that
Yeah.
should all.
Because
take
we're
work.
hoping that we can continue that and that will help with the taxpayers' contribution to hauling to Johnson.
So on the building maintenance division, there's again, a very nominal $515 increase. It's less than 1% over, no, less than 1%.
Mhm.
And then on a parks and maintenance mowing that DPW does do, we did make a reduction in the amount of porta potties that we were putting out. We are trying to get the bathhouses down at Fogland to be fully functional. And we will still put bathhouses down there, but we had far more than what we really needed to have. And we had them in some other parks. And a lot of that was because of during COVID. We really didn't have the ability to open up some of the restrooms. So even the ones I think down at Grinnell's at one point, we had porta potties down there. So we did make an appropriate adjustment to reduce that. Senior center, again, very, very nominal increases, $1,750 on a $123,000 budget. The lion's share of that is some of her building maintenance issues. And then on EDC, this is one of the adjustments we made out of the council contingency. This amount was actually in council contingency to pay for the Newport Chamber of Commerce. And there's another component of that. It's about it's actually $6,210 worth of annual fees to connect Newport. So EDC thought it was appropriate to have it in their budget. The town council agreed. So that's why there's a like adjustment coming out of that council contingency. Boards and commissions, the council made a very slight increase in the historical cemetery. Other than that, everybody else was level. And I will say that they have done a phenomenal job of taking care of a lot of our libraries, a lot of our cemeteries. And we're actually gonna, through American Recoveries or some of our gaming monies, we are going to get them some additional tool sets to help lift the buried stones and things like that so they don't break. Civic Appropriations, Newport County Mental Health was, they actually asked for a lot more money than this. The council thought it was appropriate to at least give them a nominal amount because they do some work with us. And then the library came in and fully justified through some of their maintenance contracts and services that they're providing to the library, that their budget had a $12,000 increase. The trustees came in and actually explained all that to the town council, and I thought they put a very good presentation together.
I do have to tell the budget committee that Catherine is doing an excellent job over there. She's doing more than a librarian needs to do. She's doing all the maintenance. And her presentation was excellent. And we felt that what she asked for was appropriate.
And they actually have I couldn't believe how many people actually visit and utilize that library. And it's not just people just, like one time. They have a full part of, of all their programs that they provide. So I think it was like 28,000 visits in the past year. So, and
they're also getting a lot of grants for these
They do.
programs, which we encourage from all our department heads.
So on the beaches, there is some significant increases in the beaches, and it's part and parcel of they would like to have more hours. The 9 o'clock start, they really need to start at 8. Our gates are they're filling up the beach before we can even get in there to get some of the monies. Getting lifeguards, we've had a real problem trying to get lifeguards. I think last year we had 3 lifeguards. So there were a number of days that we were closed. We're trying to hire as many as we can to kind of get them so they're on a rotation, they don't get burnt out. So we thought that the increases that they provided are justifiable. There is one expense there that kind of looks like an anomaly, but really they either take cash. So they're trying to get it so they can actually take a debit card as they go through. It's not only is it the systems that we have to deal with, but it's also fees and processing. But we'll be able to utilize that with other venues for like all of our
Harbor Commission,
parks and
the harbor.
Yeah, Harbor Commission could use it. Like what they're talking about trying to get so that there are dinghy docks and things like that, that they could take fees through credit cards as well. They're summer program in leagues has had some nominal increases too, and some of that was due to staffing as well. We are getting a tremendous number of people who want to utilize our services. And for for at least 20 and 21, we had restricted a lot of it. And the numbers that came in last year was just astounding that we had. And there's just pent up demand that people need to have these for their kids while they're out in the summer. And then we kept the community events issues down to what we were in the past year. So that by and large is the quick and rundown. And I know that there are some questions that people might have, but I will say that the council was very, very thorough in what they went through. And believe me, they cut out quite a bit of what was initially asked for in the budgets. You will see that other than the ladder truck, there is no capital. It's the council's position that all capital will be dealt with in the whatever process we utilize for gaming and or the American Recovery monies. So, and right now we did a presentation of the American Recovery request, at least from my standpoint, where I see the town's issues at is like major needs that we'll never fund in an operational budget. Things like radios and communications, broadband, and things that we just can't afford in a budget where we would tax people. If we can improve our infrastructure by utilizing American Recovery to make our systems better, it actually is a kind of an indirect tax relief to us all, because we would never be able to do it without these kind of monies. And so we took some of our major capital requests as well and put them in there as well, that we kicked down the road for the last couple of years. So.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Do we have any
I do want to mention something. The Recreation Committee did want to do a summer program, a parade, fireworks to kind of celebrate Tiverton and the end of COVID, and maybe this summer we can all get together. They did ask for several amounts of money for that. The power plant gave us $100,000 check for civic appropriation.
We renegotiated the tax stabilization agreement with them. And part of the agreement was that they wanted to make a contribution where it was more beneficial to the people of the town instead of just going into taxes.
Yep.
So, and the council agreed that it was a very goodwill gesture. They actually increased their taxes from $800,000 to $1.1 million and added this $100,000. So it was a pretty good deal for the town.
So what we decided with this was a really great way to celebrate Tiverton and promote business. And this year we will hopefully pay for the fireworks and the whole celebration through the power plant money, with much more money left over. But with coordination with the EDC and Recreation, maybe every year we can get businesses in the community to contribute and do this and not cost the taxpayers a cent for this celebration. We all feel that we needed to do something to help the Recreation Committee. They work endless hours, volunteering to bring forth all of our programs. And we decided that this was a great way to celebrate Tiverton and use the power plant money in that way.
Thank you. No, that's excellent work.
John, I can barely hear you.
So, do I have any questions from anybody on the committee related to what we just went through? Mr. Janick.
Yeah, Chris and Denise, you gave a great explanation of a lot of the increases, things that I'd noted on the budget and changes. But a couple that stuck out that I just wanted to touch base on. One was on the fire. The increase, I'm assuming that the change in the first class comes from promotions from the second class firefighter ranks.
It does. It's a progression that goes up as we have had a number of new staffers over the last couple of years. So as they go through their probationary period, they get to be third class, second class, and then up to first. So it's an automatic progression. It's not subjective. They don't start testing until after they get done with their first class to become lieutenants and captains and things like that. So it is automatic.
That's basically what I thought. I just wanted to confirm. You explained how the overtime was impacted there and what the because of that. On the police, there's a big jump in the lieutenant salary costs. I don't know.
So the police chief has recommended to the council as through a couple of initiatives that on our night shift from 4 to 11, 4 to midnight, I think. The swing shift, I call it. It would be ideal to have three, a progression of, a captain, lieutenant, and sergeants. And it is devoid of having a proper supervisor in some aspects of it. So as they become fully manned, which they are pretty much getting there now, that they would implement adding a lieutenant to that night shift to provide us with some additional manpower and supervision. And a lot of that is because with the same thing with the fire department, we have so many new guys. We have a very, very young staff. And believe me, it's when you're the designated as the, lead person, for lack of a better term, and you don't have anywhere near as much experience as we would really like to have, especially now that they are accredited, it makes a lot of sense to ensure that they have a proper protocol and chain of command to follow. So that's part of the increase there. And I think the other part of the increase is designating, and I don't know if it's been approved yet, but I fully, but I know with the grants that they are getting, he had a desire to move one of his men to a lieutenant for the community policing. He is going to justify that through the town council when that comes to fruition. But that was part of the increases as well, I believe.
Yeah, I remember Officer Leduc being the candidate that had been mentioned here as a result of his multiple community outreach efforts. So yeah, I understand that. Okay, I'll open it up to any of my fellow committeemen.
Chris, I got a question. You said on the police department, their salaries, they got an increase of 2.5 for the next 3 years.
2.75 for each of the next 3 years.
So for the next 3 years, they get 2.75 each year.
Correct.
How about fire?
Fire is being negotiated now.
And we get
We're in the middle of negotiation. That's not for public discussion at the moment.
okay, and DPW, that's coming up also.
They're also under, we will begin starting their negotiations very quickly, I think in the next couple of weeks. And all of our ASME employees, all of our clerks throughout town hall, clerks at the DPW, fire department and police department, and some of our records clerks over at the police department as well. And dispatchers are also part of ASME.
Okay, I'm just looking at numbers and it's a little scary, actually. If you look at the total general fund expenses from last year, the 54,118,092 compared to the year before that was 52,905,972, which was an increase of 1.212120. Correct? And that's with no capital expenditures in there. I mean, that's with capital in there. We had a whole bunch of capital expenditures. So this year, we've got 55 million. We're over 1.713 with no capital expenditures in there.
But Dave, you have to keep in mind, we have to close the landfill. And that's our
I know.
problem.
So thank God. Thank God.
Thank God we didn't have capital, and you're absolutely right. And that was part of our motivation to do what we did, because we knew that this was coming down the road. We knew this was coming down the road, and we knew that's what had to be spent. You're absolutely right, but it's because of the landfill closure.
Yes.
So of the 3 million that we got in gaming monies, we allocated, the town council was very fortunate enough to allocate 2 million to the school systems for
and 1 million
very,
for
very
us.
desperately needed bathroom issues, and both middle school and high school, that they are in desperate need of some real capital issues. And then on the town side, we did some things that we took out of the budgets, or that we kicked out from, don't forget, FY 2020, while all that money was in there, we lost we played catch up through all of FY 21 for what we did in FY 20.
Oh, yes.
And when we lost all that money in April of FY 20, we had to, we wanted with a balanced budget, but we also took every initiative and every project off the table. And we slashed every budget that we had. So some of that was being made up in budgets throughout FY '21. Not that it was glaring, but we were very cautious about spending money because we didn't ever know if we were going to get that gaming money back.
Right.
It wasn't until the end of FY '21 that we finally got the governor to agree to settle with us, at least for FY '21.
And Dave, keep in mind that was due to Chris Cotta, Mike Marcello, John Edwards, that we got that casino money back. But we had no idea whether or not that was gonna happen.
Right.
And we also got the law changed.
I just want to clarify, that's fine.
But you also, the general fund is building. There is an amount you can take from that to balance this budget. And that's up to you guys, what you want to do. We're deciding what to do with the rest of the casino money for next year. But I think the general consensus from the council is to keep it restricted and continue on our path this way.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and I'm assuming when you get to your meeting on 3/31,
That's when we'll discuss revenue.
we'll discuss revenue. So I have a revenue sheet for you. I'll also talk about, there's a residual at that point. And I know we're not gonna vote on this tonight, but in addition to the general fund reserve, the TIF bond that's coming to a close had a mandatory reserve within it. That money is gonna come back to the town. We'll work with our auditors to ensure that we get that booked properly.
What is that amount? I don't
It should
remember.
be, I believe it's around $500,000.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
so there is some additional monies coming in. I just want to make sure that our auditors understand what's coming and how to book it, so it becomes available so that you can utilize it. I don't want it to come in next year and then, because we didn't know, it wasn't booked properly. If we know it's coming in based on that last payment, it's a timing issue. So it's a matter of form that we do it properly so that it becomes available. So I just want to make sure that that's done as well too.
Chris, how does the assessment looking for tax assessors? How does that look?
That hopefully Dave has better numbers for you. I do know that our numbers went from, I think we were at 2.4 million, 2 billion.
Yes.
What was last year? 2 point?
Jumped up significantly.
It all hinges on that.
It does.
Dave, you have to also keep in mind that last year we kept our budget very restricted because we knew the needs of the schools.
Oh,
So we
absolutely.
kept our percentage increase very low so that the schools could get the 4%. But eventually that's going to catch up with us.
Right.
So
It all does.
So we're also on
Well, it does.
on the quickened timeline this year because we're not deferring the FTR like we did the last 2 years. So Dave Robert right now is in the middle of doing the collections of all the tangibles. They're coming in. He hasn't even got an opportunity to validate them yet.
Right.
He's just finishing up on all the appeals on the reval. So he will be available to talk to you about, where we are with all that. But I do believe we have a fairly decent increase in our town's overall valuation.
Good. Okay. Thank
Dave, I
you.
really do have to, Dave, I have to assure you that we went through this budget with a fine tooth comb.
Oh, it looks
We
it.
did- Yeah, and we did everything we could to decrease our spending. But we have some cost issues right now. We have 3 contracts that are up in the air.
Yeah.
And we also have to close the landfill, which everyone knew was coming.
Oh, yeah.
But we're doing the best we can. We're also gonna, we haven't voted on this yet, but the American Recovery money, I'm hoping we can use to build the recycle center,
Now,
which would have been an additional cost.
Chris, how much money is in the landfill closure account? Is that going to help us?
So landfill closure has, I believe it's 10.5 million, correct?
Yes.
I think by the end of the year. It's 10.1 million right now. I think we're anticipating by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have 10.5. The contract, we put it out to bid, the contracts came in, we awarded the contract at 11.4 million.
Okay.
We have an oversight contract for $500,000 of the people who actually worked with me to get the plan together and get the plan approved for the closure. The only thing that we haven't factored in is any kind of contingency funds.
Right.
But we do know that of the closure amount, the 11.4 million, 500 million, 5 million of it is strictly related to the membrane.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't anticipate a large contingency related to that particular item because it's product going over a certain area. So the contingency hopefully is less than 10% of the residual. So we're working now on a number of different initiatives to fill the delta of what we don't have. One, the revenue is still going to keep coming in. But do we change that process? That's a good reason for the recycling committee and the town council to work together. And obviously, if you guys have any ideas on what we should be doing with that process, we'd entertain any thoughts on it. We're looking at borrowing some monies from the infrastructure bank that would be at a very low interest rate.
Yeah,
But because the federal government came out with some of these programs, there's some debt forgiveness as it relates to those programs. So even if we went through this process and got some debt forgiven to pay for the overseer, it's, so we're trying to explore those opportunities to maximize every available benefit for our ratepayers.
but even as the price of gas goes up with that membrane, that's what that's,
Well,
that also goes up with it.
well, they bid it, they own it now.
Yeah, right.
So it's overseeing that contract is going to be a daunting task.
Okay.
Dave, I also have to say that our department heads, the police chief and the fire chief has to be commended for going for these grants and working as hard as they did, because if they hadn't gone for these grants, our increase would have been a lot higher.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. The only problem we have to watch, Denise, is that with these grants, they're great, but they only cover us, some of them for 2 or 3 years, and then we own them.
Correct.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, and some of us on the council have talked about eventually increasing our amount to the budget so it wouldn't be a great increase after 3 years,
Right,
increasing our amount gradually, so it's
Absolutely.
not so much of a shock at the end.
and they're needed. They're needed. It's not
Well,
something that.
well,
we
the
don't need.
legislation that was passed with the fire department, we had no choice.
Oh, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so Bruce Reimels really, I have to tell you,
Yeah.
worked unbelievably to get us the safer grant. And hopefully we will get it, but it's not lack of effort from us.
No, and same with the police grant,
Same from the police grant.
yeah, same thing.
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree. Thank you.
And we're still looking for grants. The police chief is a great grant person, as you all know. He
We
can
got
find
an
grants out
council
of
here,
nowhere.
another one.
Yeah, he finds grants that nobody else sees. So we're still, every department head is looking for grants daily, and they're really being productive about that.
So we'll obviously keep you in tune during this process. If we get any notice of health insurance decreases or increases, or hopefully no more increases, but if we get rid of information, we'll definitely pass it on to you. But we're an open book when it comes to this stuff.
We appreciate that. We're rapidly approaching the time the docket's due anyways. Any other questions?
John, we're having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, John, we can't hear you.
So let me,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
you turn yours.
It's like a bad commercial.
You gotta bring the mic closer to you.
So
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
Okay.
we
Oh,
can't.
you're muted.
No, it's fine. I guess I gotta turn my speaker on here.
No, we don't know if I can hear them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. All right. So do we have any other questions from the body? The budget committee? Should I go around the room? Ms. Isherwood now? Okay.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. It
All
has, it has to do with the revenue, Chris and Denise. Two of the revenue projections related to the casino are off, the detail and the hotel tax. Do you have any insight into why those are down projected?
So can you hear me?
Yep.
So the hotel tax is down predominantly because the casino has kept the hotel closed. So that has been a work in progress with the casino people about getting that open. They did open it of recent. I'm not sure if it's open fully, every day. They did have a problem trying to man it during all the COVID, especially even during the last Omicron, portion of they were very concerned about manning that and keeping people employed in there. So they made a conscious decision to keep it closed. As far as the details go, because they were closed for so long, we're now catching up. We were, we didn't actually generate as much money from what we projected last year as what we thought we were going to. That's why those numbers are projected to be a little bit lower. And we're just praying that it doesn't wind up with another closure from another outbreak. But that's, we were trying to be realistic based on the numbers that we have as to why those numbers were decreased.
And there's a decrease on the Fogland beach receipts, but there's an increase in the beach patrol. Are those kind of related?
So beach patrol it's a new item from what you see on the docket. It has always been there. It's been paid for out of the police department overtime. So the patrols have always been there. We didn't make an adjustment on.
Mike, it's been reflected in the overtime for the police. So the police patrols have, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the police patrols were taken from the overtime. So we kind of wanted to make it look very transparent. The police patrols are now changed to actually what we're spending the money for.
I don't have a problem with you breaking it out individually. That's great, I think. The receipts though on the beach.
Receipts, hiring staff.
Yeah.
Related to the receipts.
Yeah.
So we don't have gatekeepers. We don't collect money.
Right.
And that was a huge problem last summer, trying to have enough gatekeepers. Many times, we would take the gatekeepers out of Grinnell's and bring them down to Fogland because it generates more money. But there were times we didn't have gatekeepers. It's very similar to the lifeguards. Without them, we can't charge when there's no lifeguard at the beach. You know, we have a gatekeeper.
Right. Well, I'd rather you be, try to be as accurate as possible. So I appreciate that.
We're trying to reflect what's really happening. And
Yep.
if I need to, we'll adjust the monies if we can get enough people employed and keep it running, it will actually bring the revenues up.
Right.
It's
Right.
Definitely difficult to hire people today.
Yes, it is. I know it firsthand.
All right. So if there are no further questions from the body,
Joan is here if you have any questions first.
did anybody have any questions specific to the clerk's budget? I know it's basically level except for $88.
Yeah, please ask.
Thank you. Gibby, everybody.
Yeah, it's Gibby. He's
All right.
not doing well.
He's letting you know. All right. So if there are no questions, and there's no recommended alterations to any of these specific line items.
It's just the 1,000 and the.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that I'll accept a motion, for total municipal expenses of $22,093,979, which would reflect a decrease of $1,000 in account 2200 audit of town accounts. So I don't know if there's a motion on.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Derren, seconded by Mr. Janick. And I guess since we're hybrid, I got to do a roll call vote.
Yes, you do, John. Be careful.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Derren.
Yes, aye.
Mr. Darren's a yes. Mr. Haley. I believe you're muted, sir.
Muted, Tom.
He got his hand up, I presume it's the Don.
Looks like a yes. Yeah.
Mute.
Yeah. you can do that. Up or down.
He's abstaining.
We'll circle back to Mr. Haley if you can figure out.
I'm sorry. So I'm just going through these spreadsheets and I can't line up my spreadsheet with the town's spreadsheet. So one of them's wrong and I'm gonna maybe abstain for now or until I can resolve the bottom line numbers coming out.
Gotcha. Okay. So Mr. Haley's an abstention. Ms. Arruda.
I'm in agreement.
All right, Mr. Cherry,
Yes.
Miss Isherwood.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Janick.
Yes, and I just want to hope that Tom's numbers come back more favorable than what we're seeing, but yes, otherwise.
And I, as the chair, am a yes. So motion passes. What is that? 6-0-1.
Yeah, look what I got.
6-0-1. Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Want me to bring anybody in?
We have one more component to this.
With me?
Yep, with you. I believe. Yes, we do. So the next line item is total capital expenditures, including school capital, which is 209,486 and represents a decrease of 10,654.
So as it relates to capital, if you go to page 2 and page 3, the totals on page 3, from 220,140 to 209,486 for a difference of 10,654. They're basically the time payments that will come. One is coming to an end, and then we have 2 additional ones that are also coming to an end soon. Plow truck and the streetlight purchases. Actually, the streetlight purchases are on for the next 2 years. And then there's the ladder truck, the 97,000. So that's the difference of what, and there is no school cut.
Correct.
So, and the ladder truck was put in because it was a 10-year last year.
Yep.
So we subsidized it with 50,000 as a down payment from, actually we used gaming money. To
Correct.
subsidize it. And then because it was a 10-year acquisition, we couldn't fund it with gaming because we only had 3 million. So we can't obligate something because gaming is set by ordinance and the next council can reverse the ordinance. So the council is working hard to try to modify it so it becomes part of, I think, part of the job. But so that's the only items in capital.
Wonderful. Any questions from members? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion
I'll
for,
make a motion to approve the municipal capital at 209,486.
Second.
Second. Oh,
all right. Motion by Mr. Janick, second by Mr. Arruda. Roll call vote. So here we go down the list again. Mr. Perry.
yay.
All right, Mr. Perry's a yay. Mr. Derren.
Aye, yay.
Mr. Darren's a yay. Mr. Haley. I think
Yay.
this, by the way, is where the mismatch is happening because we had this one broken out separately. Mr. Arruda.
Yay.
Mr. Cherry.
Yay.
Miss Isherwood.
Yay.
All right, Mr. Janick.
Yes.
All right, and I am a yes as well. So 7-0. And that concludes our portion of the municipal piece. So is
Mr. Haley and I as well.
Mr. Haley, you were an aye, yes?
Yes, that is correct.
And one
Yes.
quick question for you, Mr. Haley. Was that the issue with the numbers not matching up?
I don't think so.
So Tom,
We have one more bite at this apple anyways, next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah,
on the spreadsheet that you have, can you tell me the date on the top of it?
the one I'm using is it the 9th?
It'd be the 9th.
Yeah,
But your spreadsheet's the same as everybody else. It's just quite confused. So
Right.
call me in the morning and we can walk our way through it. You and I have had opportunity to do this before. I'll make sure you spread, because I know you tabulate for the levy and, all those numbers derive from that spreadsheet. So I want to make sure at least your spreadsheet is fine.
yes.
All right, call me in the morning. We'll work our way through it, all right?
Okay, great.
All right, Mr. Cotta, is anybody from the school?
So let me see what's in the attendee room. We have Amy Robert, Elaine Payne.
I just want to thank everyone.
I'm sorry, Ms. Medeiros?
I
Give me
just
the-
want to thank everyone, and I think you all appreciated the work we put into this, and thank you.
Thank you. And for anybody watching as well, part of the reason why we delayed having our meetings is so there was no duplication of effort on both the town council and school committee side. It made more sense for us to be dealing with final numbers from both of those departments, which in this instance makes it a lot easier for us to go forward because, you know, all the work has been done. It's very easy to see what the proposed changes are rather than having multiple revisions. So,
You want to bring in Amy Roderick, Elaine Pavo, Jerry Locken?
sure. Is Dr. Sanquioni on as well?
believe he is.
okay.
Sometimes it takes a bit. So,
Okay. Worst case, Mr. Cabral, you're going to be up. And while we're waiting for their admission, for everybody on the budget committee, if you haven't swung by town hall, the school department was kind enough to drop off binders with all the backup, and they will be in Mr. Cotta's office.
Okay, so I brought everybody in. So let me see if there's anybody in here I need to move out. Oh, everybody's okay.
Perfect. All right, so Dr. Larkin, Dr. Sanquioni, thank you for joining, as well as school committee member Pavo and Amy Roderick, head of finance for the school committee. Want to use this time for you guys to at least go through a presentation, give us the broad strokes of the budget, or the school appropriation component. And then that way we can take that, digest it. There may be a question or two through this presentation, and then we'll be able to dive into details at a future meeting. So I don't know if you guys have anything specific to screen share. And if so, Mr. Cotta, can somebody screen share?
Yep, everything should be available. If it's
Okay.
not, let me know. I'll definitely go back and check.
So apparently anybody can screen
Yep,
share.
Anybody should be able to.
I see it. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Budget Committee. It's a pleasure to present to you the FY23 school budget request. This has been voted and vetted by the school committee over multiple meetings, starting as early as November and bringing it up to today. So we are going to share a presentation with you at this time. Okay, so you'll have a clear view of that. Thanks, John. Okay, so let's take a look at the school department presentation and budget proposal for FY23. You know, when we started this process, actually, we started way back in October when we started talking with our cost center leaders about the needs of the students in our school system. And we came up with these goals. Wanted to share these with you. Meet all of our mandated fixed contractual cost, maintain all our professional staff positions. And you see in red there about not sustaining any more cuts. We'll certainly talk about the cuts we've made over the last 2 years. Add back critically needed positions that were cut. I want to say to you that that is not in this budget. There was a recognition that budgets are about priorities and looking at existing revenue. So there is not one position that's being added back that was cut over the last 2 years. That goal was not met. Certainly, we have to meet all mandated costs associated with special education. That's a federal requirement. We put in calculated increases for operations, energy, maintenance, and transportation, which is all required. We want to maintain our capacity for technology and curriculum. I want to highlight the word maintain. There's nothing additional in those two areas. And certainly we want to educate the 1,800 students we serve daily to superior levels of instruction and achievement to help them pass on to their next levels. And as we always say, education is an investment, not an expense. I want to share with you some background information just to give you a sense of how the school system sets up here. This is looking at FY20 per pupil expenditures, just comparing us to East Bay. This is the most recent data. We just submitted FY21. As you know, we're in FY22 right now. And you can see that certainly Tiverton doesn't underpay, but certainly is not overpaying for education by any sense of the matter. One of the things that drives our budget in a lot of ways is looking at our enrollment. And you can certainly see how a little bit of a roller coaster here to where we are now in FY21, which is 1,800 students. That dip in FY20 is really inaccurate. That was obviously the COVID years. We had a lot of people choose to homeschool their students, not a true reflection of the real population of our school district. And in yellow, you can see what's predicted out for the next 3 years, which is pretty stable. I would suggest to you that our numbers are increasing, that we're drawing back more students into the public school system, and actually expect those numbers to exceed what is being predicted. Kind of show you a look at a budget. Don't worry about the total that we have up there. We'll speak to that momentarily. But as any budget that we put together, it's always based upon our personnel. People drive the industry that we're in that allows us to be successful. And you can see here that basically 70% of our budget is spent on our personnel. The next highest level, other purchase services, that's transportation, tuitions, of things of that nature. And you can see the small amounts that are put out into some other categories. And if I was to train your eyes on the 70% that's spent on personnel, I wanted to break that out for you here and show you that the largest percent is spent on teachers, followed by paraprofessionals, followed by our custodians, followed by our administrative assistants, then administration. And this tells you that a budget for a school system is appropriately budgeted. That, again, we want to allocate our resources to our people that are our most valuable asset. So now looking at the numbers and hopefully bringing some clarity to that. This is FY22 where we currently stand. Our operating budget is, and I'll speak in round numbers, is 32.5, 25.6 of that comes from the town, almost 7 million comes from state aid. And to balance this year, we needed to use $507 of SO2 funds to help maintain staff that we were cutting. So really our budget was 32.2. And again, we operated with a structural deficit of that 757,000. Now, again, it's a clear point to make here. We spent 757,000 more than we were allocated. And even with that, we still cut 4.5 teachers. So really our deficit was $1 million. We made up the other approximate 250,000 by cutting teachers. And you can see here that there's some pretty drastic cuts. It follows the previous year when we cut 23 staff members. Cutting guidance counselors in a pandemic is not something we really wanted to do. Is actually everything on this list we didn't want to do. We cut actually a program out of the high school, the culinary program, and you can see the other teachers listed there. We really have sustained some significant cuts over the last 2 years, and I would suggest to you that if you're a byproduct of the Tiverton public schools, this is quickly becoming a very different school system than generations prior have attended. So putting together the FY23 budget, we start where we are for FY22. You can see that number at the top there, the 32.5. The school committee has voted a request of 4.4% from the town. You can see the number there. It's about $1 million, a little over. Right now, we're expecting a state aid increase of about 88,000, but that's not guaranteed yet. We have not seen the final governor's budget that has had a lot of fluctuations to it since December. We were up, we were down, we're at this small amount right now. So it's truly really an unknown. So the FY23 request from the town is at $33,531,278. What the point I want to make, and I know Chairman Edwards had to ask me to stay focused on that number, and we will, but a level service budget, which means transferring exactly what we did this year to next year. No added staff, no added programs, no added curriculum, no added technology, just paying the bills and moving forward. That budget is truly at 35 million. And that's an issue and a problem that we've been battling for years. And I'll show you that historically momentarily. And again, I want to just bring that out, that a level staff budget, and again, I feel like I've described that pretty well, but just again to say that it's not adding anything. It's just taking what we have and moving forward, looking at what the town can allocate, and then looking at, 1.4, little over $1.4 million deficit again. The school committee will have at their disposal some funds to overcome that deficit and to avoid future cuts, but as you're sitting there, I'm sure you're thinking and understanding that that's one-time revenue. It's just taking this structural deficit and moving it 1 year forward to FY24, where it's just going to continue to be exacerbated. I want to summarize the budget for you, and then we'll break it into two categories. You know, our budget is pretty easy to follow. When you pick up your budget book, if you haven't already, you'll see it's broken into two categories, really: personnel and benefits and expenses. And on the personnel and benefits side, you can see it again, as you saw in the pie chart, that it's 69.8%. That's the people who do all the great work in our school system that we want to maintain. And then our other major categories is our energy, which obviously is something we have to continue to work with. Special education, which includes transportation. And the numbers here correspond in your budget book to the budget account. So if you wanted to track back the number to make it easy for you, we put those account numbers there. Transportation, which is required under state law, which is 2.7 million. Special ed was 4.5 million. Technology, just maintaining that at a little over $500,000. And all our other accounts, which comes in at 1.9. And just to give you a sense of what those other accounts are, that's legal, property and liability insurance, tuitions to other school districts. It actually is the largest share of that. The audit that we're required to pay for every year, water, telephone and sewer, waste removal, things of that nature. So again, our point is this is really a no frills budget. Again, it's maintaining staff and programming that we currently have and not doing anything additional. So to break our school budget down, again, it's in two major categories and really makes it easy to understand. It's salary, which again is about 70% of the budget, and then our expenses. So when we look at salary, FY22, we're about 16 million, and the increases that we're facing, cost of steps and lanes, the first two numbers there, that's contractually mandated. Longevity stipends, again, is contractually mandated. We've reserved a small amount of money to negotiate. Both of our unions, NEA and Council 94, contracts are expiring this summer, so we have to begin negotiations with them. And then we want to cover some of the positions in ESSER 2 in this year's budget. Positions, there is not adding in any positions, as you've already heard me say. These are positions the school department has always had, and we want to maintain them. So the increase on the salary side is about a little right at 708,000. So it's a modest increase, and most of it is contractually mandated. And again, here, this is not in our budget. You know, at one point we had debated and talked about bringing back some of these key positions. You can see them up there. We certainly could debate them if you like. They make a big difference. They're difference makers for our students, but they are not in our budget at this time. And so shifting to the other half of our budget, which is the expenses, which is about 30% of the amount. Again, in 22, we're at 16.4 million. We're looking to increase that to 18.3, which is about a $1.8 million increase. And now I'll show you why we're increasing that side of our budget. And again, it's all pretty much mandated. So medical and dental, we called the trust and got an estimate from them of what they're expecting medical and the dental to go up. We used the middle number. We're hoping that it doesn't go any higher than what we're expecting. So you can see that increase there. Statewide transportation, those are contracts we already have in place with both our special ed transportation and our regular ed transportation. You can see the amount that's going up. Again, regular transportation right below that. Repairs and maintenance, a small amount, a modest amount. And as you know, we have a maintenance effort clause that we have to maintain to continue to receive our housing aid from RIDE. Energy, so the predicted amounts for gas, electricity, and everything we use to keep our schools lit and heated. Technology, a small increase, and that's for subscriptions for our software packages and things of that nature, and all other. And you can see the categories here: liability insurance for our SRO, tuitions, supplies, etc. So again, a modest increase there. But as you can look at this list, you can see there's really nothing we can cut from this. These are all things that are mandated, required for us to continue to do the great work we have been doing. So I just want to pause there for a second and just reiterate that our budget's pretty easy to follow. It's broken down into two categories: our people, which is 70% of our budget, and our expenses, which is the other 30%. The request is at a 4%. It really doesn't get us where we need to get. However, you can see that in that request, everything that's going up is based upon things that have really fixed and mandated. And I want to share this chart with you now to just kind of give you some historical perspective of, the structural deficit that the school department has really been under for a number of years. And you can see here the appropriate for the last 5 years, the appropriation from the town, what it was, an increase or a decrease, what our overall increase was, and how we had to use, or the school department used one-time funds to really balance or keep people in place. And you can see, again, if we focus on the town appropriation, it was a negative increase in 17-18. And again, you would think that everything is going up, like I'm showing you in this budget presentation, yet, those things that go up had to be covered. And so it begins this structural deficit where it compounds itself. You can see the town appropriation in FY19 was at 0.4%, and there was a huge use of one-time funds that year to balance so we can maintain our staffing. Again, drawing down those funds to the point where they were non-existent anymore. The town appropriation in FY20 was 5.1. That was a petitioner's budget that year. We're very grateful for that. And you can see, again, we had to use one-time funds to balance. FY21, we had a 0% increase, and again, using one-time revenue to balance. But this is the year that even though we used every dime available in one-time revenue, we cut 27 positions, and that was devastating for the school system. There's a list of those positions in your budget book. Happy to review that if you have questions. And then this year, FY21, again, we were funded at 3.9% from the town, but we had such a big decrease from the state. It really ended up being a 1.2% increase. Again, the school committee decided to use ESSER 2 funds to maintain as many positions as possible. And again, even with that, we cut 4.5 positions. So you can see over the last 2 years now, we've cut 31.5 positions, and that has really made it a negative impact on what we're offering in our school system. And one of the things we want to focus on, though, is that we truly believe that the program we have in place works and that we can educate students to very high levels. And I'll just show you a little bit on return for investment. One of the things I've spoken about, and all of our administrators and all of our staff is focused on, is the graduation rate, right? Our goal is 100%, and we're eventually going to get there. And you can see the modest increase that we've been having over the last several years. We're getting there. We're actually already looking at this year's rate, and we're thinking that could be close to 96%. No guarantees yet. We want to get a few students across the finish line. But the point is that we're putting in these programs, we're putting in support systems for students, and we know it makes a difference and it works. And we want to be able to maintain those systems and programs without cutting any more. And then I'll share something with you that we're very proud of, that 3 of our schools were ranked by US News and World Report as exemplary schools. So you can see the rankings here: Ranger, Fort Barton, and Tiverton Middle School. The high school just missed. We expect them to be on that list next year, which would be 4 out of our 5 schools. And again, this would suggest to you that the program we have in place, the system we have in place, the things that we're doing for our students works, but we have to maintain it. We just cannot sustain any more cuts, or it's going to start having a detrimental effect on the education we provide. So I know that's a lot of information in that presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or expand on that information. All this is outlined in your budget book with greater detail. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sanquioni. I appreciate it. I don't know if any members have any questions at this moment. The plan here, because we did just get our hands on the books today, and I know some of you haven't picked them up yet, would be for us to, review this and then reconvene here at our next meeting to ask some in-depth questions. So are there any questions from the body? No, Dr. Larkin.
Sure, thanks, John. So I just wanted to piggyback a little bit onto some of the things that Dr. Sanquioni was saying. One of the issues, of course, has been the structural deficit that has been carried through. So in the first year, we'll call it COVID-1. In March 2020, originally the budget committee had voted, I think it was a 2% increase. And then actually ultimately in the fall, when all was said and done, we had a 0% increase. And that was something that the school committee accepted, recognizing that there were a lot of issues and a lot of uncertainty at that point. But that did create a structural deficit for us that continues to echo through each of our fiscal years, based primarily on contractual obligations that we had to our unions, contracts that had been executed in 2018. Secondly, of course, was the structural deficit created by the cut in state aid last year. So the increase is a modest one and sort of, makes up for a little bit of that, but it actually doesn't still make us whole. That is derived by a relatively complicated formula that actually ultimately is making is a determination made by the state of what the funding should be. So while most of our increases over the last 10 to 15 years have been by increases in state aid, they were essentially saying to the town, you're kind of underfunding the schools. And then the last thing I'd like to say is, Dr. Sanchioni, our teachers, our staff, and frankly, our parents and our students are really to be commended, because one of the things we succeeded at, probably beyond our expectations and actually better than any other community in the state, and we were commended for it, was actually keeping the schools open over the 2020-21 school year and this school year, with very little COVID transmission, very little learning loss. And that was actually one thing Dr. Sanchioni did not refer to, was RICAS testing that was performed. And actually, I went to a presentation at the Rhode Island Department of Education. They kind of really didn't expect me. I don't think they expected school committee members to show up, but I did. And they were basically prepping the entire audience of school administrators to brace them for all of the learning loss that they were going to see. And Tiverton actually had very little learning loss. We actually stayed steady in ELA, and some of our schools actually went up. So, I think, there is true value that is being given to the town by the performance of our teachers and our administrators. And we just need to kind of keep our nose to the grindstone and continue to make the improvements that I know that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. Any questions from anybody else in the body? Ms. Isherwood? No? All right. Mr. Derren, any questions?
No, other than to say that clearly we all need to be supportive of education. It's the one thing that we bequeath to our youth, and in our dotage, if you will, they're the folks that are paying our Social Security. So I appreciate the efforts of the school department, the school committee, administrator, staff, to minimize the sort of the eating of our seed corn as much as possible. We need to educate our children. They're the future, and that's all I guess I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Make sure I can. I don't know if I muted myself. Can everybody hear me? All right, good. All right, so I'll continue around the room. Just top of the screen here. Mr. Arruda, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
All right, Mr. Cherry.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Perry. All right, Mr. Haley.
No questions, thanks.
All right, wonderful. So I think we've got kind of everybody. Obviously, we will, revisit this at the next meeting, and I'm sure after the committee has had some time to digest some of the information, I'm sure there will be more questions that will come up. So thank you very much for the time this evening and the presentation, and for the rest of the members. The town administrator does have copies of the books with the hard copy materials and detailed backup here at Town Hall. All right, so next item on our agenda is—
John, before we go, can we discuss the timing and the date of that meeting?
Yep, absolutely. That's actually the next item on our agenda.
Okay,
which would be,
go ahead then.
this coming Saturday, 9 a.m. That one will be virtual via Zoom. And that agenda has been posted, and that's where we will dive back into the school appropriation amount. And then following that will be the wrap up for items such as, revenue, grand totals, resolutions. We'll do a discussion on resolutions to be submitted with the docket. And then the final docket to be submitted to the clerk, which should give us enough time for Mr. Haley to go through, that final week, make sure everything matches up. Last thing we want to do is, put Mr. Haley under the gun where you got to have it in by midnight, and we give him only an hour or two to finalize it. So that's the remaining.
Why change now?
So general committee can make a meeting on Saturday morning, nor can the superintendent or our business manager. That was not something that was actually discussed with us. It was changed unilaterally.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Dr. Larkin. I guess, we as a budget committee.
Feeling, John, it's a fact. I'm taking care of patients that time of day on Saturday.
Okay, and I
think we should
I can appreciate that, but we, as I have reiterated to you several times, we have a specific schedule. We have to keep to that schedule if we're going to meet our requirements for the docket submission under the charter, and we're not in a position to deviate from that schedule. And I can appreciate that you as the chair are not in a position to attend our meeting, but you have a 5-member board, and I have to imagine that somebody on your committee should be.
No, John, I polled our board this morning and none of them were able to attend. And the decision was made unilaterally. That's not collaborative.
I disagree.
I'd like to have you poll your committee to see if they can meet another time. We're more than happy to meet on the 31st.
That's not on the agenda, so.
Well, no, you do not need to post, John, to discuss timing and agenda items. So you do not need to be posted for that. So I'd like you to poll your committee to see if they're able to meet at another time, that either on the 31st or sometime next week. But we are not able to meet on Saturday. We were never asked if we could, and we can't. By the time we actually knew that you were meeting on Saturday, we were not able to post if a majority of our members wanted to attend.
Well, it looks like we don't have to worry about that because none of your members are planning on attending. So
it's not planning, John. It's actually being professional and collaborating with other elected bodies. So if you don't want to poll your committee, that's, I guess, for you as a group to decide. It is certainly not how interactions between the elected bodies have usually played out in Tiverton in the time that I've been involved.
Well, with all due respect, Dr. Larkin, I know you've reiterated to me a number of times that your belief was that this meeting was supposed to be scheduled for 3:31. I don't know where that comes from.
I can forward the emails back to you.
By all means.
Okay. But that's incontrovertible, John. We were supposed to meet on the 31st. We're more than willing to try and find another date next week. But we cannot meet Saturday. No one from the school committee could meet Saturday.
Well, in that situation, then I think that we as a committee should still meet on Saturday, go through the items which were just given today that the vast majority of the membership does not have. We can review those items, come up with questions as a group. And then at that point in time, we can determine whether or not it makes sense to update the agenda on the 31st and get you guys in there for that discussion before we finalize the budget document. And actually, that's enough time to post.
Okay, I would have thought you'd want our participation in a meeting, but that's true. You can sort of work through it all yourself.
Well, I think
certainly Mr. Cherry and Mr. Haley have experience on the school committee already, and Mr. Janick does, I believe, too.
From our perspective, or from my perspective, Dr. Larkin, we need some time to review the materials that we were given today, and I think discuss amongst ourselves as a body as well.
Okay, that's fine. But I want to make sure that you understand that our not attending a meeting on Saturday is because we're not able to. For
I can appreciate that.
Reasons. Okay. Very good.
All right. Wonderful. So the final item on our agenda then would be adjournment. So we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Ms. Arruda. Motion by Mr. Janick. I don't think we need a roll call vote for this, so all in favor?